The unspoken class war inside every American workplace. What your coworkers' salaries actually mean. You trained him yourself, walked him through the systems, answered every question, vouched for him in meetings, and somehow, he's taking home $34,000 more than you every single year. You only know that because someone in HR forgot to lock a folder. And once you see the number, you can't unsee it. You found it by accident, Tuesday afternoon, shared drive. Someone left a folder open. Not password protected. Not buried, just sitting there in the company's internal system like a forgotten landmine. A spreadsheet titled Compensation Review, Q3. You clicked it the way you'd click anything, absently, half paying attention, and then your stomach dropped. Your name, your number, and then everyone else's. Here's what they don't tell you about a moment like that. It doesn't feel like information. It feels like surgery, like someone cracked you open, rearranged everything inside, and sewed you back up while you were still awake. You scroll slowly at first, then faster. You're not sure what you're looking for until you find it. Marcus, same role, hired 8 months after you, making $34,000 more a year. You think it's a mistake? Has to be. You look again, same title, same department, different number. You close the laptop, you open it again. The number hasn't changed. Now let me take you back, because to understand what that moment really cost you, you need to understand who you were before it. You were the good employee, early in, laid out, never once asked what you were worth, because somewhere along the way, without anyone ever saying it directly, you had been taught that asking was tacky, that grateful people don't negotiate, that if you worked hard and kept your head down, the company would take care of you. That was the deal. That was the story you'd been living inside. You took your original offer without a counteroffer because you didn't want to seem difficult. You remember the exact moment. The HR coordinator read you the number over the phone. Silence. You filled it immediately. That sounds great. I'm really excited. She moved on. And somewhere in the distance, a number was locked in that would follow you for years. Because here's what nobody tells you about your starting salary. It doesn't just sit there, it compounds. Not like interest, like a cage. Every raise is a percentage of that number. Every we think you're doing great, and we're giving you 4%. Every promotion, every review cycle, all of it. Anchored to the number you accepted on a Tuesday afternoon when you were 23 and just wanted to seem professional. You had been giving the company a discount on your labor for years, and you didn't even know there was a menu. Back to the spreadsheet. You start doing math in your head. 4 years. 4 years of 4% raises on a salary that was already below market. You pull up a calculator. You type slowly, like going slow might change the result. It doesn't. The gap between what you've earned and what you could have earned, what Marcus is earning right now, isn't a rounding error. It's a car. It's a down payment. It's a year of rent. It has already happened. Those years are gone. That money is gone. And that's when the feeling shifts. It stops being shock. It becomes something older, something that lives in the chest and doesn't leave. That specific quiet fury that doesn't come from being attacked. It comes from realizing you were never part of the same conversation everyone else was having. You think about every time they asked you to do more, every stretch assignment, every we really need you on this one, every performance review where they called you exceptional and handed you 3%. They knew. They always knew what the number was, and they never told you. Here's the part that took me the longest to understand. This wasn't an accident. Wasn't a few bad managers making short-sighted calls. The entire system was designed to produce exactly this outcome. Salary secrecy isn't a neutral cultural quirk. It's a mechanism. It is the mechanism. Think about what you're actually walking into. The employer knows every salary in the building. They have market data, an HR team that benchmarks compensation annually, years of practice closing offers at the lowest number someone will accept. And you walk in with your last salary and whatever you scraped off Glassdoor at midnight, anxious, terrified of asking for too much, rehearsing how not to seem greedy. That's not a negotiation. That's a performance of a negotiation. And you've been performing it without knowing the script. But the moment salary information becomes real, not vague anonymous ranges, but actual numbers for actual roles at actual companies, the entire dynamic flips. Suddenly, we offer competitive compensation as something you can verify. Suddenly, you know Marcus is making $34,000 more than you, and that knowledge is worth more than every personal finance podcast you've ever listened to. Not metaphorically, mathematically. If you renegotiate and close even half the gap, that's $17,000 a year, more than a year of aggressive budgeting, more than canceling subscriptions and making coffee at home, and every piece of advice that locates the problem inside your habits instead of inside the structure. The structure is where the money is. After the spreadsheet, you couldn't unknow what you knew, and that created a problem because you had to figure out what to do with it. You couldn't walk into your manager's office and say, "I found the compensation spreadsheet." That file was never supposed to be there. You'd stumbled onto the truth, and now you had to use it carefully without revealing the source, which meant you had to learn how to negotiate from knowledge you technically weren't supposed to have. So you did what you should have done 4 years earlier. You started researching Levels.fyi, LinkedIn salary data, Glassdoor. You reached out to a recruiter just to see, and here's what you found. The market already knew what you were worth. The number in that spreadsheet wasn't an anomaly. It was close to market rate. You were the anomaly. You had been the anomaly for 4 years, and no one had rushed to correct it. You put together a case, documented your contributions, pulled comp data, scheduled the meeting, and you walked in differently than you'd ever walked into that room before. Not aggressive, not apologetic, anchored. You told your manager you'd been doing some market research, that you'd had a few conversations, that you believed your compensation wasn't aligned with the value you were delivering or with what the market said your role was worth. And then you named a number, not a range, a number. Something happened that no one had prepared you for. They said yes, not immediately. There was a process, a few weeks. Let me look into what's possible. But 6 weeks later, your salary was adjusted, not all the way to Marcus's number, but significantly, more than any raise you'd ever received, more than 4 years of 4% combined. One conversation, one number, years of loss, reversed in a single meeting. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. You didn't become more valuable the day you negotiated. You didn't suddenly develop new skills. You were the exact same person the week before the raise as the week after. The only thing that changed was that you had information and you were willing to use it, which means for 4 years, you weren't underpaid because you weren't good enough. You were underpaid because you didn't know you could be paid more, and the system had every incentive to keep it that way. Right now, somewhere, there's a version of you from 4 years ago. Excellent work, total loyalty, waiting to be recognized, and sitting in a folder they can't access is a number that would change their life if they ever saw it. The secrecy was never about protecting anyone's privacy. It was about protecting the spread. The gap between what you'll accept and what they'd have to pay if you knew the truth. That gap is the profit margin on your loyalty. Salary transparency isn't a radical political idea. It's the most basic form of market information. And the fact that it got framed as impolite, presumptuous, something that causes drama and ruins team dynamics, that framing wasn't accidental. It was taught, absorbed, passed from manager to employee to new hire until it felt like common sense. It was never common sense. It was just very effective. So here's what I want to leave you with. Not a negotiation script, not a template, not a framework, just this. The single most valuable financial conversation you can have isn't with a budget app, a financial advisor, or a YouTube channel at midnight. It's with a peer, a colleague, someone in a similar role, where you both agree to just say the number, your number, their number, out loud, no judgment. That conversation is worth more than anything else on this list. Not because it guarantees a raise, because it removes the blindfold. And you cannot fight for what you're worth if you don't know what worth looks like. You found that spreadsheet on a Tuesday. Whatever you find, use it.